everybody. It's Friday, and we're talking a little Bengals football. We're talking a lot of different things regarding the combine, all kinds of different things, having some fun. And we've got a special guest. I'm Anthony. He's John. And first of all, John, how you doing, bud? Good to see you again after a couple-day hiatus.
Yeah, I got my jokes in about your LA weather a couple of days ago. Now it's monsooning here in Cincinnati. So
it is?
What goes around comes around, I guess.
Well, I heard when we were on the air the other night. I mean, I heard some of that rain come down on the window when we were going live, but I didn't know it got that bad. But hopefully you guys are staying dry. And we have a special guest. You probably, if you are a YouTube subscriber, you probably saw the episode of his show 3 and Out with his buddy Kevin hit yesterday evening, I guess. Jason Garrison, who contributes for Cincy Jungle. Jason, what's going on, man? Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's raining terribly. It's been raining all day. My backyard's a lake. It's awful.
It's a lake? You got to get the slip and slide out then, man.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Go have some fun with the kiddos out there. Slip and slide out there. But, well, good to see you guys. We're going to kind of talk about some of the stuff going on with the combine, with the Bengals, and then, of course, fielding questions from folks. If you are so inclined, you can shoot us a text or a phone call, 949-542-6241. You can leave your question in the live chats, either on the if you're watching live through our YouTube channel or through the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. You can do that. You can tweet one of us. You can tweet the website. There's a running comment section on cincyjungle.com on the post there, so you can leave a comment there. We'll be kind of monitoring all different things. YouTube super chats take precedence there. So those will get first looks there, and someone needs to go get their phone, I guess, right?
That's a work phone. Sorry. I didn't really think about that.
That's all right. So yeah, let's kind of talk about some things as we get updated on some things and wait for some of these questions to roll on in here. I think we had one at the top though. And this will kind of be not only a question that we can field, but we talked about it right before we went the air. Nolan Smith, I think, was the guy that ran the insane 4.39 as an edge defender at the combine there, which is incredible. I guess, I mean, can they land Nolan Smith? I guess we'll see. These are the types of things. How much do these, you got to go back and look at the tape when you find these types of things, right, John? I mean, you got to match the tape with the athletic skills and all of that, but can the Bengals land him potentially? I guess I wonder, because they don't really go. They haven't got. Who's the last edge defender they've taken really, really high? I mean, they usually wait kind of day 2, day 3 sometimes for some of these guys. So I don't know.
It would be like Carlos Dunlap.
He was second round.
Pick. Yeah, but the first round, Justin Smith?
Justin Smith, right? Yeah.
I can't think of anyone.
Like Nolan Smith is. People were so shocked, appalled at the fact that he ran like a sub 4, which makes sense. He's an edge. He's 238 pounds. It's not the same as some other guys who are north of 280 running in the 4.5s or anything like that. But also, he was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school for Georgia. So he's always been this freak type of athlete, and I feel like this probably confirmed he's going to go in the first round, just because these types of athletes don't normally fall out of the first 32 picks. But there's, I think, a lot of questions that linger with him. His production at Georgia, even being there for 4 years, is not necessarily the greatest. And I know that's an issue with a lot of guys who kind of hail from Alabama or Georgia just because they're on stacked rosters, but you never really saw him dominate like a true number 1 edge rusher does. But he's always had this athleticism in his back pocket. It's why he ultimately ended up at the best collegiate program in the nation right now. So I think there's definitely a chance he's still there at 28, just because I think there's still questions with him actually on the football field.
It's kind of the a little bit of the mold of the Clavon Chason player, right? I mean, the tall, lean guy tested well because of it, and then it came from the big program. And then you got to go back and you got to say that's the concern. What you brought up, John, is just does the tape match what the tools are that are being shown at the combine? I mean, we know, Jason, that these guys specifically train for the combine just to have a good showing, particularly if they're guys that don't have if they don't have strong college tape. they have to rely on this and these wow times or these wow performances in these drills to potentially up their draft stock.
Yeah, it's a massive job interview. I mean, that's all the combine is, and the whole thing's just really kind of ridiculous. But yeah, a lot of guys just train for a great showing at the combine, hoping that'll up their draft stock, and then it doesn't really translate to the field. And we see that happen all the time. So
yeah, we do see it happen all the time. But and then some team happens to fall in love with some of these guys, and then they end up moving on there, or they end up I don't know, falling in love with them and taking them, or just kind of saying, yeah, that's just there's too much of a risk there.
But like just last year, though, like his Nolan Smith's teammate Trayvon Walker dominated the combine, and then he went first overall, right? But he was like a much bigger athlete, and he probably had more like desirable physical tools. But we see this happen all the time. Like a time like that, like 40-yard dashes typically move the needle more than anything in terms of draft positioning. So yeah, like he definitely did his job on I guess Thursday.
Who was the one guy a handful of years ago? His name escapes me. He was an edge player from Ohio State that ended up going really, really high and was one of the biggest. I think he went to the Jets, one of the biggest busts. I'll have
Vernon
to look that up.
Golston.
Vernon Golston, that's the guy.
Yeah.
That's the guy. And that was the guy, I remember, that he looked like a stud. The college production was up and down, and then all of a sudden he blew the roof off of Lucas Oil Stadium at the combine, and then he Jets strike early with him. I think he was definitely top 10. I think he was top 5, top 7 pick, I think. And then just never amounted to anything. He just was a worked out warrior type of guy. So, you gotta, buyer beware on some of this stuff. But John, I saw this one because you kind of mentioned this a little bit as we were going to get ready to take the air. This is from Drake Barry saying, saw that the Bengals met with Michael Mayer, Dalton Kincaid, Darnell Washington, Sam Laporta. Do you think we have a shot at Mayer or Kincaid being there at 28? I think Kincaid, if I was just to throw my 2 cents in immediately here, I think Kincaid probably has a better chance of being there than Mayer, just because Kincaid did not test here. He did have that injury at the Rose Bowl, and Mayer is kind of looked at as more of the overall NFL tight end, right? Does a little more in the blocking game, lines up more traditionally than, Kincaid, who does more slot work. But I think in today's NFL, Kincaid has a lot of value for an offense. I really like that kid, but I mean, I think the Bengals will have a shot, and potentially one of those guys, maybe even in the second round when they're on the clock.
Yeah, let's just get this out of the way. The Bengals will have a shot at basically 95% of plays that anyone brings up. Like there's 5% that are, probably locked for the top 15, but we've seen crazier things happen in the draft. Typically guys who just check all the boxes in terms of what they look like on film, how they test, what their production was, if they interview well. Like those guys typically don't fall out of the first 15, 20 picks, but everyone else is pretty much up in the air. Like no one really expected Tyler Linderbaum to last maybe as long as he did last year. There was some talk about how far he could drop, but once the draft actually happens and just one domino kind of falls, you never know how the rest are going to fall. So with Mayer and Kincaid, I would assume that at least one of them is going to be there. And like I don't think it's out of the question that neither one is going to be there. It's just interesting how the Bengals are taking a lot of attention to tight ends. We kind of expected that to be the case because they don't really have any, long-term options at that spot right now.
Cupboard's bare for sure. Yeah.
And it's just a really talented class. So that either means that a lot of them are going to be flying off the board early in the first round, or teams all kind of think the same thing in regards to, well, if this class is so deep and there's no real need to take one in the first round, especially because it's a position that doesn't always work out when you invest so early there. Like the sweet spot is typically between rounds 3 and 5. So maybe that's just how every team kind of mind melds with this situation. But it definitely seems like the Bengals are interested in the top guys, which, is definitely notable.
I also think that last year in the draft, I correct me if I'm wrong, but there was only one quarterback taken in the first round. That was Pickett, right? Yeah, and I don't think that's going to happen again this year. So there's going to be, it was just kind of weird. You don't usually see that. There's going to be a run on quarterbacks where there might be 4 or 5 taken in the first round, which will push a lot of these guys back to 28 where we're selecting. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then also, you've got kind of an enigma going on with the number 1 overall pick, because you're hearing now the Bears have it, right? And they're locked in apparently reportedly to Justin Fields. Usually team picking number 1 overall is getting a quarterback. The Lions last year, though, picked number 1 overall. They took Hutchinson, right? So no quarterback there. So just kind of a little bit of anomalies and enigmas happening with the last couple of years with the number 1 pick, and then towards the top with quarterback stuff. I see Lindsey Brillhart asking a question. I'm going to rely on you two for this one, being the resident UC guys. Do you guys think that the Bengals could or should take someone from the University of Cincinnati? Jason, I'll let you go first on this one, bud.
Not in the first round. But
okay.
But I would love to see Pace Jr. And I think he's going to be a great. I don't know if I think he's too small to play like a defensive end, but I could see him like a situational pass rusher, a guy who plays like outside linebacker. But he was such a good blitzing linebacker for UC, and I know he did really well at the Senior Bowl. But I could see maybe if he's available, day 2, or I don't know if he'll be there in day 3, but I'd like to see him here. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Oh, dude, like
John, you got to weigh in, buddy.
He was so good at UC. He was so good at the Senior Bowl, and now it's like I hate always referring to the Marvin Lewis era, but it's still kind of fresh in my mind. Like
Sure.
when it was back then, and he was always trying to find his Peter Boulware, like his Dante Moak that didn't actually work out. You were always fearful of guys who were tweeners in that sense, like, oh, is he a linebacker? Is he an edge? Like there was even some BS going on with Carl Lawson his first 2 years, right? They weren't really sure how to use him. And
he was an outside linebacker on the roster, wasn't he?
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
But now, at least for the time being, Luna Rumo's here, and I feel like you just have ample amounts of confidence that you just give him someone like Pace. Like he's going to find a way to utilize him effectively and consistently, regardless of what his actual listed position is. Like the scheme that they run now is so multiple that he's not going to be locked into one singular role. He's not going to be utilized in any way that's going to minimize his impact. So I feel like you have confidence now in the Bengals taking on guys like Pace and getting the most out of him. And obviously Josh Wiley is another one of these tight ends who is probably on the outside looking in of like that top 4 because he just didn't really end his career that well. But in his first couple years of starting, when they had Desmond Ridder at quarterback, like he was definitely about it. And strength schedule, those issues obviously come into play, but like he definitely looked the part as a guy that can stretch the field at tight end. And if you want to dip your hands into the position sometime on day 2, maybe probably towards the 3rd round, I feel like that's a great spot to invest in him.
I'm not sitting here and saying Wiley is Travis Kelce. I'm not going to say that at all. But I will say that when I was at the Combine in 2003, Kelce sat at the table by himself the entire time, and nobody talked to him because no one. I mean, he's coming out of UC, and at the time, UC was in the Big East. I think it was the very end of the Big East, and it's going to be the same for a while. But I could see Wiley doing really well. He like you said, he could really stretch the field. I could see him doing really well in the NFL. So.
Well, let's talk a little. I mean, I know we're focusing in on the draft, combine, all that with everything going on, but let's transition a little bit for the time being because there's a question here in the live chat. We had a text from a little while ago, kind of centering around a free agent situation. I'm going to share this screen with you guys. I think I've pulled up the story at least. I haven't yet. Let me pull up the story. But basically, a quote from Duke Tobin came out from the combine. He had a lot of gems aside from the old get your own T. Higgins type of playground bully here. But we're going to spend to the cap is what Duke Tobin recently told everybody at the NFL Combine, meaning that the Bengals, I think also part of that is not only re-signing the guys that they have in-house, and that's probably one of their primary focuses, if not the primary focus, but I think also it does point to potentially going outside again and trying to make improvements that way. So you see with that quote being kind of in the background, you see a question here from Sean Krutka saying, what position do you see the Bengals spending the most on in free agency? And then we had a text from Dan in Tennessee kind of to piggyback on that one. Are the Bengals for sure going to move off of Lael Collins at this point in time? First impressions, John, when you look at all of this in the landscape of this quote here from Duke Tobin, what are you seeing? What are you feeling?
What is the cap? Is it the actual cap or is it the Bengals cap? Because the Bengals cap has remained the same for, I don't know, as long as I've been alive. It's always about 8, 9, 10 million under what the actual ceiling is, just because you have to pay your draft class, you have to pay off
the rookie
workouts.
pool, John. The rookie pool,
of course, right? And I don't think
God
there's
bless
anything.
Jeff Hobson in the rookie pool.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because like this past year, I think the Bengals had their lowest amounts of rollover cap space going into this season in recent memory. I think it was only like 2 or so million. It's usually in that 5 to 6 million range, and that gives them more space in the coming years. But then it basically gets netted out because you don't spend all the way again to the league-wide cap. This is open for interpretation because Duke Toba doesn't have to say specifically what cap he's going to spend at, but the Bengals always spend to their cap. They always end up at about 10 or 9 million in space, and until that changes, that's just what I expect.
Jason, I don't know, man. I mean, I think you and I mean, have maybe not as much knowledge as our buddy John Sharon, but we have more years following this team because of years accrued on the planet. Following this team. So we have truly seen and experienced it all in terms of free agency with the Cincinnati Bengals. But here's and I kind of want you to focus, if you can, a little bit on the Collins situation too, if you could. But I mean, again, the backdrop here, Duke Tobin, we're going to spend to the cap. Sean asking the question, where do you see the Bengals spending the most in free agency, and might it be at right tackle because of the La'el Collins situation?
I don't know. I personally don't see them signing La'el Collins, and then even though he struggled in pass protection and stuff like that for a part of the year, and then they lost him to a knee injury, I don't see them just flat out replacing him or cutting him. They could. I just don't see it happening.
Via free agency, you mean?
Right, via free agency. Yeah. But I could see a situation where they sign somebody that would start the year, because I don't know if La'el Collins is going to be available at the beginning of the year. I mean, his injury came in week 16 or 15, you know, and it was a pretty bad one. I don't know if he's going to be available, so I could see them signing someone for depth and then maybe working Collins back in. I also think that I saw I don't know if it was Frank Pollock that said it or if it was the offensive coordinator that said that they have that Jackson Carman's in the mix for right tackle at the beginning of the year. So
Pollock,
I don't know if I had to predict a position that they're going to spend the most, I would say tackle, whether it be left tackle or right tackle, because I think that either Collins or Jonah Williams is going to have to be replaced either this year or next year. So
well, Jonah,
well, they're not replacing Jonah this year. Like he's going to start at that cap hit 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's interesting because I think if it was up to them, if they could be assured that they could find a tackle in round 1 or 2 to just develop for a year, they would take that. But I don't think they can go into the draft with those assurances, just because you don't know when that run on tackles is going to go. So yeah, I agree with you, Jason. I feel like a guy like Cameron Fleming, who signs for like some incentive to like start this year just because he's got a relationship already with Frank Pollock with his days in Dallas, like a guy that can just spot start for half the year. Maybe if he has to go a little bit more, that's the case. But I just don't see like the Mike McGlinchey's of the world being attracted here, just because I don't think they're going to give up on La'el just yet.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's music to a lot of people's ears, at least if you're keeping tabs on Twitter and everything about that. But yeah, I think it is, in one vein, it's like, you kind of saw what everybody was warned about with La'el Collins and the Bengals signing him, the missed practices, the injuries, the sometimes inconsistency, that all came to fruition last year. And then, you did see towards the middle end of the season, a small handful of games of dominance, right? Where he had, and they were against, I think, largely weaker opponents, but still signs of dominance, signs of being that guy. So in a lot of ways, it's still kind of premature in the contract that they signed La'el Collins to get rid of him. But at the same time, like, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Juwan Taylor, the tackle out of Jacksonville there, a young ascending player who has not missed a game in 4 seasons, albeit he's had some struggles in run blocking, good year pass protecting last year. So that, I mean, it's kind of the switch off there from Collins to him in terms of what they do and don't do. But, you need to have someone that you can rely upon basically at that position. And Collins went in there, he can be effective, but it's hard to be able to rely on him in season or even coming into this season. So For me, I guess it sounded like a little bit, Jason, what you were talking about is kind of a little bit of a Riley Reef type of situation at right tackle for the Bengals, who they signed. I mean, granted, they signed him to be the starter at that point, and there wasn't kind of this Collins situation that they have now, but kind of that stopgap, maybe for a year type of veteran signing that's easy on the pocketbook, easy on the cap hit type of thing, where you feel like not a top end starter, but can be effective and can kind of steady the ship a little bit. Maybe that's where they go. They could also, as we know, fellas, they could look at cuts that occur after the draft, because teams release players depending on who they pick and positions they pick in their draft, or the post June 1 cuts. Right. I mean, these are all elements that they could look at and say, hey, there's a guy out there we did not really expect to be out there. Let's take a look.
Yeah, I could absolutely see a situation where they sign like a Riley Reef, a guy to right tackle, and then after June 1st, sign somebody else or something like that. But yeah, I don't expect them to make a huge splash in free agency at the tackle position, just because they have Williams and the Bengals are loyal. That's one thing that they are. They're loyal to their guys, and I just don't see them signing Leo Collins some 3-year deal and cutting him loose after one. And we don't really know how healthy he was. I know he had some back issues in the preseason. I don't know. I know those injuries can linger. I don't know if that held him up all year, and then obviously the knee injuries.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why they can't just do nothing there, right?
Right.
Like they knew all this going in. That's why they structured the contract the way that they did. So it's definitely the most fascinating position to watch, just because there's no just simple solution to this. Someone's going to maybe have their ego kind of hit a little bit.
Yeah, that is for sure. Well, we're going to get to some more questions. Definitely leave those for us. Call or text 949-542-6241. We're trying to keep an eye on that, but a lot of questions are coming through the live YouTube chat as well as the live Facebook chat. So send those to us there. If you've got one via Twitter, send it to one of us or the Cincy Jungle account, and we'll take a look at that. Or, of course, the live comment stream on Cincy Jungle, the post that we have going there. So we'll be here for a little while longer. I want to remind folks that if you are new here, welcome. I'm seeing some new names, which is cool, submitting questions and whatnot in the live chat. So welcome to some newbies if you are new, or if you just happen to finally catch one of these and submit a question, that's cool too. But you can subscribe to this show and all of the Cincy Jungle podcast shows on your favorite audio streamer: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of them. And our guy Jason just added a show as well, 3 and Out, as we mentioned. So that'll be part of the slate, along with what Bengal Jim does, what John and I do, and what Matt Minnick, the coach, Matt Minnick, does on his Coach Speak and Chalk Talk episodes. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel via the little show icon underneath the SB Nation Cincy Jungle icon there beneath John and next to Jason. Click that, click subscribe. Click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. And, of course, smash the thumbs up on both our videos if you can, as well as on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. There's 80K people following that account, which is awesome. But, yes, and we would, as Phaeton the Fourth said, again, a hearty congratulations to our guy John, who just accepted a new position. We talked about Jason's show that he's bringing to the table. John, remind us once again where people got to go check out your stuff, your writing stuff. Obviously, you're going to bring it on the podcast, but tell us about the big gig.
Yeah, man. As of, I believe, Wednesday, I'm officially employed with A to Z Sports. I'm going to be covering the Bengals and other AFC North teams. I have to write about the Steelers, actually, so that should be interesting. And
good luck with that.
Title is right. Official title is divisional editor and Bengals reporter and writer. So that it should be. It's quite the jump. It's a move that I'm working for quite some time, and being at Cincy Jungle has really prepared me for this. And like I said, I'm not officially out the door of CJ yet. I've got about another week of that, but obviously keep going to Cincy Jungle. But if you have some time, hop on over to a2zsports.com/Cincinnati for some other takes as well.
We will for sure do that, and don't forget us little people on your way over there, dude. I love, and I want you guys to pick some questions too, but I love this question from our guy Dave Lennox, who is an avid viewer and watcher. What events could you guys excel at or be terrible at the combine? What do you guys think you would be pretty good at? And what, I don't know, should we do best event, worst event? Let's do that. Best event, worst event.
Well, you're avoiding his initial question, which is how many reps at 225 can you put up, Anthony?
Me?
Yeah.
I could probably put right now. That's about what I rep in the bench press as it is. So I would probably put up, if I was really trying to slam out just one thing, I would probably get to 12 to 15. I think. So that was probably, I didn't even think about that event. I was thinking more of the on-field stuff. So I guess I would do okay at that. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I'm not offensive lineman. I could probably get to 12 or 15 reps on the bench. I think at this point. And that's with the recovering elbow, John Sheeran, remember the injury there. But
come on, it's been like a year and a half, man.
That one, and I actually can kind of catch pretty well. I can catch pretty well, but I'm not fast. I can't jump at all. So I can catch pretty well. I can throw pretty well. I could bench press, but I couldn't do the high jump, the long jump, any of that crap. I can't do any of that stuff.
Bro, is there a drill? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, like I always used to practice the L drill or the 3-cone when I was younger. I always liked
really.
I thought that drill was so cool and showcases your ankle flexation. I don't know if I could do it very well now, but I like sprinting. I like the 10-yard or the short shuttle, which I guess is 20 yards or whatever. So yeah, some type of those events. I feel like I could be decent.
You're shifty. You're quick. I like it.
I'm slow, I'm not quick, and I'm weak. So I think I can catch. I can do that okay. If the drill where the receivers run down the field and they're receiving passes from either side, I could maybe do that, but it's going to take me a long time to get from one end to the other field to the other. I'd say that's my best drill. If they don't time me, and then my worst drill would be. It has to be the 40. I mean, it would be like one of those 9-second kind of things.
Oh my gosh!
It would be
not 9. What do you think you would run in a 40 realistically? What do you guys think you would run in 40? Yeah,
I'm going to say 6. I'm going to be right around 6. 5.5 to 6.
You're at the Rich Eisen time type.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, John. I feel like you could crack 5? You think?
Ooh, I could not crack 5. I feel like you could put basically 90% of Americans into a bucket of like 5'6" to 6'2", and there's just no differentiating basically anyone at that point. If you run faster than 5'5", I would consider you pretty fast for just a normal human being,
Yeah. I don't think I could crack 5, even if I worked at it a little. In my heyday, I could probably run real high 4s, but I don't think I could crack 5. There's no way. I'd probably be low to mid 5s, I think.
In my heyday, I think I could be 5'2", 5'3", but yeah. Now today, if I ran faster than 6, you'd have to have a wheelchair to cart me off the field. So I just tear every ligament I have to do it.
Hamstrings explode on the field.
Exactly. They're bringing out the stretcher immediately.
Well, some of the guys, look at this segue I'm going to provide for everybody here. Some of the guys have been running excellent 40s at the combine, including a guy that has kind of started to emerge a little bit on the Bengals radar from a fan standpoint, at least. There hasn't been a lot of dots connected to him per se from the team, but Kalijah Cansey just ran really, really well yesterday. But the arm measurement is, I think, was it you, John, who put out on Twitter? It's some of the shortest in history, or was that Joe Goodberry maybe?
That was Joe.
Yeah. And then, we kind of, when you compare him to some of the better defensive tackles, namely Geno Atkins, Aaron Donald, they're about 2 to 2.5 inches longer in terms of arm length. But this guy ran a sub 4.7, and we know, the production and the skills and just the true 3-tech that is a pass rusher. That's just a kind of a menace of a guy. I don't know your thoughts about this guy. Does he last at 28? Might he be the guy the Bengals look at 28? Is he Geno Atkins 2.0 or Geno Atkins light? Arm trouble or arm length trouble you at all with the speed that kind of negates that a little bit, John?
I feel like if you're ever looking for outliers, I guess There's some things that you can't fall short of, and for me, that's just like certain athletic traits for certain positions. Definitely, just how you produced in college, and if you looked competent in college. And as far as those three general, boxes, Cincy has checked all three of them. So if his one downside is that his arms are short, which it's not nothing, it's still something to take into account for, especially when you're trying to project these guys to certain teams. You have to look at maybe the Bengals' history about what typically have they targeted in terms of physical measurements at each position. In this case, would be defensive tackle. So we'll have to go back and see if there's anything that kind of tells us that they would kind of lean in that direction. But in terms of all the other things that matter the most in terms of projecting a guy in the NFL, like, he's checked all the boxes. And I tweeted out, like, if he didn't play for Pitt, maybe teams would be more liable to mess this up. But I mean, you're looking at an undersized defensive tackle who definitely looks the part on tape, who looks the part at the combine, he looks the part on the box score and on the stat sheets. Everything is checking here that, like, yeah, he may not be Aaron Donald, but we saw the impact that Aaron Donald had at that size with that skill set, and he's playing with the same helmet on. So I feel like that's an easy comparison to make. It's obviously very irresponsible to compare anyone to maybe the greatest defensive player of our lifetimes, but yeah, the guy's a bona fide first-round talent, and I don't think 30-inch arms should take away from that.
Right. Jason, I want to, because when you look at Geno Atkins, he's 6'1", varied between a little under 300 to right around 300 pounds at his playing weight. You talk about Aaron Donald, kind of similar there. I'd have to look up his specific stats because I don't want to totally misspeak. But, the profile is somewhat similar there. I think Cincy's at about 280 and he's about 6 feet. So, I mean, there's some similarities with the size and everything. And what Geno Atkins really did well for a guy that was picked in the 4th round, what he excelled at was the use of leverage and the use of his lower center of gravity and his ability to use that to his advantage against much bigger and sometimes even strong. I mean, he was exceptionally strong himself, but sometimes even bigger or stronger offensive linemen with the long arms, and he was able to get in there and be effective. So that has to be the hope with this guy, Jason, that has the shorter arms, but still the immense speed, the good tape, and the ability to get to the passer. He's going to have to rely on some of those types of abilities that, right. That a guy like Geno Atkins did, where you kind of go, well, that's where he made his living, is utilizing those strengths.
Right. And you said that maybe he could be Geno 2.0 or Geno Light, and Geno Light is enough for any team. Yeah. I mean, Geno Atkins, how long has he been? Has he been out of the league for 3 years, right?
3 years.
At least two. 3. Yeah, at least 2. So, I mean, I expect Geno Atkins to go in the Hall of Fame as an interior pass rusher. But yeah, Geno Light would be, he should be. But Geno Light would be more than enough to add this guy at 28. But yeah, I think using his strengths, which would be speed and then the lower center of gravity, like you said, to kind of offset those 30-inch arms. I think that he's done that in college. There's no reason to think he couldn't do it in the NFL.
Don't want to sound like a broken record, but John and I have talked about this a little bit. One of the players the Bengals missed the most last year in terms of effect that he brought in 2021 was Larry Ogunjobi. Now, Larry Ogunjobi was a guy that is a lot bigger. I think he's, 310, 320 or something like that. So he's a lot bigger, but he was a guy that just was that interior pass rush, interior tackle for loss guy. And the Bengals, when they lost that kind of rotational piece there, they paid BJ Hill. They kind of tried to do some things with Zachary Carter, who ended up flashing later in the year and kind of mixed and matched some things there. But they need kind of a consistent guy that they can, cycle in there and be able to get that extra quarterback sack, get that tackle for loss to derail a drive and alleviate some snaps from some of these guys up front too. I think that's where a guy like this makes sense. And I know this is going to be music to our guy John's ears, and this is
calling me out like that. What?
Well, you're a big running back, high pick, don't spend the second contract money guy. So I'm with you in a lot of respects here. I've been talking. I was on a show last night, Bengals and Brews, with our buddies, talking about this guy, and I've been hearing a lot of talk about it. Jason, I know you talked about it on your show with yep. Kevin. Here's my thing with it. I've kind of gone back and forth with this. I'm kind of the old school mindset. Don't use a first round pick on a running back, even if it does seem to be a generational type of guy like Bijan Robinson. I kind of use the kind of an odd and analogy, but I kind of say he's kind of that, if you want to use a baseball analogy, that 5-tool player. I guess he's a 3 or 4-tool player as a running back, a guy that just kind of can do everything well. But I say, the Bengals have done well in the second round with guys who weren't the top back build in that particular draft, and they still did pretty well with some of these guys they've drafted in the second round. Maybe they go that route. But I'm going to connect a few dots here. If Duke Tobin's statement about we're going to spend to the cap, and maybe that means a Jawan Taylor at right tackle or a McGlinchey at right tackle to potentially solidify that position, you're able to retain a lot of your guys or extend a lot of your guys, and you've taken care of a bunch of needs in free agency, and the board falls a certain way. You're picking at 28, which is just a small handful of picks away from the second round anyway, and this guy's there. If you move on from Mixon and you've taken care of your needs in free agency, I don't know, man. It would be hard to say no to this if you feel like you've knocked a lot of check marks off the list.
Why is he there, I guess, is my question.
The positional devaluation that would really be.
Despite that, it seems like he's gotten a lot of buzz to go top 20, which even for a running back is pretty crazy. Now we don't see that basically anymore. So he seems to be that guy who seems to be special enough to kind of buck this trend. We had someone earlier asking about whether or not they should trade up for him. I remember. Like in 2012, I'm like, yeah, Trent Richardson looks really nice. It'd be nice if the Bengals could trade up for him. Oof. That was the last time I ever thought about anything like that. So yeah, of course, if the most talented running back to come into the draft in like the last couple of years is there at the very end of the first round, like that's the only way that you could, justify that. Don't go out of your way to make it happen. But even still, like, and I don't want to be disrespectful to Bijan, but I look at what the Chiefs did right after they won a Super Bowl, and they spent a first-round pick on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now, obviously, Edwards-Helaire I don't think is the same prospect as Bijan, but the thought process was the Chiefs are pretty much built like a really, really good team, like the best team in the NFL. They have no other glaring needs. Might as well just take a running back. If the Chiefs could do that over, they would do it over 10 times out of 10. The very next player that went was T. Higgins, right? Like, that's always going to be in the back of everyone's mind. Like, how much value does one running back have? And I just don't see it, even if the cards are perfectly laid out in front of you like that.
I just think about the two teams that were in the Super Bowl is you have the Chiefs, who their primary running back was Isaiah Pacheco, and then you had Miles Sanders. And I don't even know. I'm looking at it now. Pacheco was 7th round pick. Miles Sanders was a 2nd round pick, but Miles Sanders had this like weird career arc where he didn't really do anything for a while, and everyone thought they were going to move on, and then all of a sudden he took off. Yeah. This is Joe Burrow's team, just like the Chiefs are Patrick Mahomes' team, and just like the Eagles are Jalen Hurts' teams. I don't want to take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hand to give to a flashy new running back just because he was selected in the first round, and then you're not going to be able to keep him, But I just think that I don't think the path to the Super Bowl is a running back's going to help them. So I just don't think they should ever draft a running back in the first round.
It would need to be a luxury pick, meaning, again, that they've taken care of a lot of different needs. They've taken care of a lot of different things in free agency and the board falls a certain way. Maybe the couple of tight ends that they really liked in the first round are gone. Your offensive tackles are gone that you want to develop, those guys. And so then you're just like, well, this guy's here. We can use him well in our offense. And it's a cheaper guy for, in terms of what Joe Mixon's cap hit is, and can do a lot of the things, if not more than what Mixon provides. So that's where I think it does make sense. What I would hate to see is if the Bengals continue to have offensive line issues or injuries or what have you, and you draft a guy like that in the first round and he's relegated to either a good portion of his snaps, a lot of his snaps, most of his snaps as a pass blocker. He's able, he's good at it, and that's wonderful that he can bring that to the table. But if you draft a guy like that and you're doing what basically the Bengals did to Giovanni Bernard at the end of his career, where you're like, electric guy with the ball in his hands, and we have to have him in to pick up blitzes because we can't pick up any up front. That's where I would say that pick would drive me nuts at that point if you end up having to utilize him in a large way as a pass blocker.
So the only way I don't throw a brick through my TV on draft night, if they were to take Robinson in the first round, is if they have like a perfect offseason. They sign the guys that they should sign them, like you said, on the offensive line. They have the depth that they need at defense. Everything's ready to go. And this is any pick at 28 would just be a luxury, like you said. If he's available, then sure. But I just don't see how that's possible to happen for any team, just to have it perfect before the draft starts.
And there's also just, from a philosophical standpoint, like, I don't want to spend first-round picks on any position or any player that I don't foresee giving a second contract. Like those picks, that's your first pick in the draft. Yeah. You want to take a potential franchise cornerstone player. Now, again, drafting in the late first round, it muddies the water a little bit, but there's typically guys at those premium spots that, one or two guys up falling. And the smart teams, in my opinion, just take those guys at those positions that you can build your team around for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Like there was a conversation last year about like Devontae Wyatt, who was, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. Like there was thoughts about him being available for the Bengals first round pick. I'm like, this guy is 24 years old. He has some other issues to deal with. Like, I don't know if you want to extend this guy after his first contract. And I feel like a running back kind of only accelerates that conversation.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You could get four years out of him. You could get 5 if you exercise that option, maybe 6 if you franchise after that option. But, as we've seen, second contracts with running backs are a mixed bag at the very, very best, if not always the wisest. But a guy who's talented for sure and can do a lot of different things. But it would be a tough decision, I think, in a lot of different respects, depending on how the board fell, what the Bengals do in free agency and whatnot. Should he be available when they pick? All right. What do you guys see either in the live chats or something you were tweeted that I may have missed here? Because we're going to start wrapping up in a few minutes.
I just want to give a shout out to a guy who he should have completely won the day yesterday, but the fact that he was listed as a defensive end instead of a defensive tackle kind of diminished things a little bit, and I don't think that's right. Adetomiwa Adebawore, like out of Northwestern, is about the same size as Kalijah Kancey, but he's listed as a defensive end, and he ran a 4.49, and he has, I think, almost 34-inch arms. So there's no question about his size and his physicality, and he also shows up on tape, and he's also incredibly productive coming out of Northwestern. Now, he doesn't have like the straight-up volume stats, but compared to Northwestern's defense, he was really productive, and that's what really matters in terms of translating success. So if he's there at 28, I'm probably booking the pick up to the commissioner, like figure out what his position is, but he's gonna dominate in the gap there, and like there's just no issues on my end as far as translating success into the NFL for him.
My guy Tuli Tuipulotu did not run a 40, but I think, John, if I and Jason chime in too if you've caught this, I'm looking it up right now. I had heard, he played last year at close to 290. He was playing defensive tackle and defensive end. And that's kind of the situation where I think a lot of people were like, well, where do you put him? Because he was making plays at both positions. We talked about that when we previewed him, John. He weighed in yesterday at 266. So a guy whose playing weight was at 290, where you're like, man, this could be your 3 tech. And then you potentially on certain downs can pop him outside, inside, you can kind of rotate him around. Now it appears he has leaned out quite a bit. And is maybe aiming to be an edge player only, maybe because that position boosts his stock a bit more than an interior defensive lineman. I don't know. But that one, a guy that I just really love for a variety of reasons, and especially potentially with the Bengals and how Lou Anarumo can get creative with a guy like that. Seeing a guy go from about 285, 290 to 266 weighing in at the combine, especially when he was kind of a tweener player as it is, that was kind of something where I go, whoa, okay.
Yeah, and I've kind of similar concerns to Emmanuel Forbes, who's the cornerback at Mississippi State. He's projected to go in the first 2 rounds. He weighed in at 166. Name a cornerback that's 166 pounds. No, it doesn't exist. Like, there's only been 3 others who weighed less than 170 at the combine since 2000. None of them have been drafted. So he ran, I think he officially ran in like the 4.3s as we're speaking right now. And I don't know if he lost weight to confirm that speed, but like now you have an offseason where he's going to have to bulk up at least 15 pounds for any NFL team to be interested in him, probably.
So that and go ahead, Jason, if you got thoughts on that. But
well, I was going to say that it doesn't matter how fast you are if you're too light to stop any wide receiver from just pushing you down on the ground or blowing you over with a strong breath. It doesn't really matter anymore.
Well, Phaeton here says Bengals met with a few cornerbacks, Phillips, Forbes, and Ringo. They're projected round 1, early round 2. I mean, is this so? I just bring this up because of who you just talked about, John. I mean, is this a guy? Well, maybe this guy's actually available now, round 3, round 4, and you feel like you can bulk him up, or you feel like you can get some weight on him and teach him. I mean, is that even worth one of those risks where you go, man, this just goes against conventional wisdom when you draft one of these guys? But if you're saying, hey, this is a guy who was once thought of as an early round pick, and now we're talking day 3 flyer, round 4 or whatever. I mean, is that something where you go, yeah, what the hell? Take it and see if we can work on.
Maybe, but I think this class is set up perfectly for the Bengals, the cornerback class, because there are 10 guys who I think will end up having probably top 50 grades for a lot of people. Like Darius Rush is another one. He's having a great day. I think a 4.37 out of South Carolina. There's Clark Phillips, who's a little bit smaller cornerback out of Utah. He probably fits in the slot, but he's also going to run really well, or he has already run really well. There's just a lot of cornerbacks, and I'm assuming at least 3 or 4 are going to be off the board by the time the Bengals pick. But I would think that the 5th or 6th cornerback in this class is probably a clear top 5 cornerback in other classes. It's just that deep, and the Bengals obviously love cornerbacks early in the draft. And honestly, it's a need that not a lot of people are talking about enough, just because like Eli Apple has been so valuable for the Bengals just because of injuries to either Trey Waynes or Cam Taylor-Britt. And if you're entering this season probably without him just because it might just be time to move on, then you have Chide Wuzie, who's in 1 year left on his contract. He's coming off of a torn ACL. And then Cam Taylor-Britt's all you have left as a starter. And then Mike Hilton is still in your slot at 29 years old. So they still need an injection of youth at that spot. And I feel like in the late part of the first round with this class, it really sets them up well to take one in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I personally think that that's what's going to happen. Is I think they're going to take a defensive back in the first couple rounds, just because, like you said, they need an injection of youth, but also there's no depth. I mean, after, if Awuzie is healthy, he'll start opposite Cam Taylor-Britt, then you got Mike Hilton. And after that, I'm not 100% sure who's on the roster. I don't know if they'll bring Eli Apple back. I think he's played the best football of his career in Cincinnati, but I think it might be time to move on, just partially because of his age, or if he signs for more money elsewhere because of how well he played here. But yeah, they absolutely need some depth, and they need, and then if Awuzie moves on after this year, they're going to need someone else to step up. And also, they don't have. I mean, you have Dax Hill. I think that a lot of people think are going to step in, and he's going to play that free safety role. But Von Bell's a free agent as well. I don't really know if Tyson Anderson's going to be healthy, or if they're going to be able to bring Von Bell back. I think most people believe they will. So I could see a defensive back taken first, second round for sure.
Maybe multiple. Yeah,
maybe
within the first handful of picks. Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to start closing up. Anything else you guys want to get to that you're seeing in these live chats before we hop on out?
It stopped raining. Finally.
Did it?
So, small miracles.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Terrell. We couldn't get your call in, but yeah, we talked about Josh Wiley earlier. Trey Scott, wide receiver, is also, they typically like to take that position maybe a year ahead before they need it, and this will depend on obviously how things kind of go with T. Higgins extension talk. And Tyler Boyd, we don't know for sure if he's going to be back. I think we can all assume he's going to, but we don't know for sure if that's the route they're going to go to. But he still only has 1 year left on his deal. They obviously value having 3 quality receivers on the field at the same time. Trey Scott makes a lot of sense as a developmental slot guy who obviously has immediate impact as a vertical threat for sure.
Well, going to be a fun weekend checking out some of these prospects that are going to continue to work out at the NFL Combine. Again, unfortunately, we would have loved to have been there. We had credentials to it, and as we explained Wednesday night, just couldn't make it happen. But we're going to keep pounding the content at you and potentially get more of those credentialed events coming your way where we get some extra access and stuff. So we'll be getting that to you, but keep an eye out for John at A to Z Sports and his new gig over there. Keep your eyes and ears open for Jason's show that he does with Kevin, 3 and Out. And then, of course, keep it to cincyjungle.com for your news, opinions, analysis, podcasts, including this one, the Orange and Black Insider. Appreciate it, guys. Have a good weekend, and we will. Let's do this again soon. Let's make it a somewhat regular thing again. I know it's the off season, but let's do it again soon.
I'm down.
All right, take care, guys.